Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play The Adventures of Lolo. Another one of those games I just played ceaselessly as a kid, and thankfully, unlike some other ones, this one's still good. Floor 1. Your mission, save the captured Princess Lala from the Great Devil's Evil Empire. You're the only one who could save Princess Lala. Lolo is a puzzle game set in rooms on floors of the Great Devil's Castle. There are 10 floors with 5 levels to them each. Your goal is to collect every single one of those hearts, those heart framers, and collect the gem from the chest that opens when you do so. However, you need to be careful. As you just saw, there was an enemy on that screen known as a snakey, which is just kind of there. They don't move, they don't really attack you or anything. They're just there to be more or less obstacles or solutions to the puzzles you're going to be doing throughout. The other type of framer in the game is this green one, an emerald framer. It's a block you can push around, and therefore used to block things like these, gulls, I believe their name is. Which, the moment you collect the last heart frame, they wake up and will start shooting fireballs whenever you're in line with them, be it horizontally or vertically. However, they only shoot fireballs in front of them, which is worth noting. Every now and then when you get heart framers, you'll notice on the top right that number beneath the circle will change to usually a 2. Those are your magic shots. More on those in a moment, though, because we have the next enemy here, which I just messed up with. So I actually need to press the select button in this case and kill myself, which is how you're going to be getting a lot of your deaths in your first playthrough. I can tell you that for a fact. Either that green enemy there is known as a leaper. They have a tendency to love to chase you down. The moment they touch you, they fall asleep no matter where they are, which means they very easily can block off your path. Thankfully, the suicide button is a thing. Either way, the magic shots, when you shoot something with them, they get turned into an egg, which you can then push around. That's actually how you can move around snakies to use as blocks to either block another enemy's attacks or otherwise. However, if you shoot a magic shot at an egged enemy, because they get put into an egg when you shoot them with the magic shot, you can then just completely destroy them and they're off the field for a short time before they regenerate. The next enemy is a skull. They're skulls, plain and simple. The thing about them is, though, they will rather. The only time they're actually, like, threats is when you grab every heart framer. At which point, they come alive. And when they do that, well, it's, they move around randomly, more or less. Thankfully, compared to some other enemies, you can block them off very easily with emerald framers. Plus, they move around randomly enough to the point where if you're in an open area with them, they won't actively chase you down. Also, that's one of the few doors that changes positions when you collect the gem. Alright, these are the next enemies, Rockies. These guys are leapers, but both more and less annoying. They move around much more slowly, as you can see. However, they have a tendency to, when they touch you, stop moving and try to block you into corners. They can be annoying early on in the game, but they're also, I want to say, the least common enemy in the game, so you don't need to worry about them too much. This is probably their most annoying level. Now, you only get 5 lives per time you start the game, yes. However, that's not entirely the case, as I'll go over in a moment. Floor 2. Congratulations, you've just cleared Floor 1. This is not the end of the battle. You're going to be reading that a lot. But first off, we have the next enemy, Alma. These guys are leapers, only they will kill you. They try to run into you outright. Once they get within a certain distance of you, they just only will try to track into you. Usually, sometimes I do weird stuff like that. Because the pathing isn't exactly perfect for them. But they can be deadly, especially when they're in tighter corridors. And now for probably your least favorite enemy in the game, Medusas. Whenever you're in a line with them, no matter what direction you're facing compared to them, like behind them or otherwise, they will shoot you and you will die. And it's not like the Gauls where you can move when they shoot their fireball. When a Medusa shoots you, you are frozen. So there's no surviving that. Thankfully, they are easily blocked by everything, including heart framers. The only thing that won't block their shots are trees, which are basically just there to have a different kind of obstacle for enemies to try and get around you to you with, rather. Because rocks are just completely malleable, except for one case. And immediately retreated to their evolution, the Dawn Medusas. These guys are Medusas, only they move around. Only in straight lines. So, like, this one will only ever move left to right, some will only move up and down, so on and so forth. But the moment you get in line with them again, they will kill you. They can still get through trees, so watch out for them. They're probably the most deadly enemy in the game just due to how they work, but thankfully they're not too numerous. More of them than even the Rockies, but it's still worth watching out for. Also, you've probably noticed it by now, but there's something about Adventures of Lolo that is, let's see, very noticeable even for a first-time player. The music. It's a very good track, but it's the only one that plays in the game, barring the intro scene and the ending. You'll grow to love it and hate it at the same time. But one thing we get in this level, as you see there on the bottom right, is a power. That is a hammer. Whenever you have a power like that and you collect a certain amount of hearts within that level, depends on the stage, you then gain access to it and you can use it with the A button. The hammer allows you to break one rock, so you need to use that in order to get to whatever heart framer is nearby that you can't get to otherwise. And now we have our first kind of panel type, because there are different kind of panel types in the game. Obviously, you got the normal brick, which is just a standard floor. Grass acts the same as normal floor, only enemies usually can't get through to it. In fact, I don't think a single enemy can walk on it. Notable, in most cases, whenever I have to kill myself, I am cutting back to the point whenever I killed myself. There are cases where I don't do that, though. So what this game ends up becoming is a bunch of thinking ahead and taking your actions carefully, so that you can, not die too easily while also figuring out the puzzle. What we just got there was an arrow changer. There are arrow panels in the game that you can only walk through in certain directions. For instance, when that thing was an up arrow, you could not walk through the top of it. However, when it's a right arrow like that, you can walk through any other direction with it. And with that, we're on to floor 3. Floor 3. Congratulations, you've just cleared floor 2. This is not the end of the battle. Like I said, they use that a lot. Also, there are times where you'll hear notable music cuts at the beginning of every floor. That's because I recorded each floor individually, just so I can make sure that things went as well as possible within that floor. Though thankfully, every level has a password, and when you use that password, you are set to the beginning of that level. I know, we just got there for the ability for this stage is a step bridge. It allows you to make a bridge over water. Water is otherwise completely uncrossable. The only things that can get across it are bridges, and if you take an enemy like a snaky, egg them with a magic shot and push them into the water, they act as a temporary bridge that can follow the flow of water, though whether or not there is a flow to begin with, I think depends on the water tiles. And honestly, at this point, we've actually seen most of what the game has to offer in terms of unique ideas. However, the big thing with this game is that it does a good difficulty curve in that the farther you go in, the more the game likes to cross its elements to make for harder puzzles. Although this is an interesting case of a puzzle game I actually played a lot of with my family. There was a long time, even before I was born, where my parents just could not beat this game, nor could my brother. They were always stuck in floor 10, I want to say. I was the first person in the family to beat the final level, mostly because the strategy I thought I did was one of those cases where they were overthinking what they had to do, which is a thing this game actually can trick you up with a lot. You can very easily overthink what you have to do, and that can actually screw up your solution entirely. Like what I actually did something wrong right there. You're supposed to ride that egg over to these hearts and then run the opposite direction, at least in order to make things easier on yourself, because then you only have to avoid the one skull. Plus now I have the last magic shot to egg him in case he becomes an issue. Now, I'm going to apologize as well, because I can guarantee you, by the end of this LP, whether or not you're new to the game or not, this song will get stuck in your head. It's been stuck in my head my entire life. It will never leave you. Thankfully, if I'm recalling correctly, both of the sequels, as well as the Game Boy version of this game, which is different in terms of stage design, had more than one song to them. Hell, if I recall, the Game Boy version, rather, of this game had an interesting idea where every level you essentially got a music note for a song you were putting together with Lala. Also, people have probably noticed it who like the series to begin with, but this is a Hell Laboratory game. You can tell because Lolo and Lala later showed up in the Kirby games, or was it earlier? I forget if this came up before Kirby or if... I want to say this came up before Kirby. You know what? I'm actually going to confirm that. But yeah, as Lolo and La, they've appeared in quite a few of the games, although they've immediately first appeared in Kirby's Dream Land 1 to begin with. Though they also showed up in the anime, which was weird for my parents, by the way, because it's rare that they know a video game character past the NES, Super Nintendo era with any, like, complete recognition, you know what I mean? Like, they can recognize all the NES, SNES major characters, like even Simon Belmont, Samus, so on and so forth. But for them to recognize Lolo and Lala, that was actually a really good moment. Mind you, I'm a staunch defender of the Kirby anime to begin with, because Kirby Right Back At You was just a very special kind of fun. Stupid as all hell at the same time, though, especially with some of the names they did. I'm looking at you, Cargoon. I love that pun, but really? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this came out before Kirby by about 3 years. April 20th, 1989, and April 27th, 1992. And here we have the next kind of environmental tile, sand. It actually slows you down, and there are cases where they will have you run around with enemies near it. And most enemies who can walk can get on sand, though that's mostly just the skulls. I'm not sure about leapers. I'm not sure if there's actually ever a level in the game where leapers interact with sand. I don't think there is. Oh, and this is how game overs work. You get a 4-character password that you can just write down very quickly. You go right back to telescreen, you press continue, and you're not put back at the beginning at the floor, actually, like it makes it look you are. You're put right back at the start of the level. So this is actually a very forgiving game by standards on the NES. Notable though, the password does the exact same thing. It'll put you at the individual level. It's actually because of that I've actually memorized some of the passwords. Like, I know the final level is GCVT, and I think the level that I was stumped on the most for is DLYK. Nice, simple passwords. Unlike certain other games on the NES that had like 24-character ones. Floor 4, congratulations, you've cleared floor 3. This is not the end of the battle. Now, something I have to also compliment this game on is I think its length is just about right. Because a problem that isn't like all over puzzle games, but is noticeably common in certain types of them, is that I think they go on a bit too long for the elements they have in them. Whereas this game, yeah, that's what, 50 levels, but the 50 levels are each one screen each, and if you know what you're doing, you could clear them in about a minute. If you don't, it just takes looking at them, analyzing what you're doing and such. Without a doubt, this is one of those games you can easily beat, even for a first time on a weekend, even if not a weekend day. Whereas some of them can go on a bit too long, especially if, say, like, your cousin isn't available to do the multiplayer campaign that's completely different from the single-player campaign. I'm looking at you right now, Valve. But more so my cousin's schedule. But mind you, it's because it's like he lives all the way 3 states away from me. So that's partially on us. So there are also some games I think just get a bit too, not absorbed in their elements, but cocky with them. Versus what the player might be able to notice and such like that. Also, I am only just now noticing, after playing this game my entire life, this level is shaped like Lolo. Huh. Clever girl. That actually kind of reminds me of Bubble Bobble like that, because Bobble Bobble had a level, I think, I forget if it was in the first game or the second game, shaped like the dragons from that. Floor 4, though, is where I think the game starts to really pick up in difficulty. I think the hardest level in the world in the game, rather, is probably floor 9. Because by that point, the solutions start just getting really long. And I also apologize because you're going to see me pausing every here and there to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Because I love this game, I've been playing it my entire life, but I don't have every solution memorized. A lot of these are ones I am doing for the first time in probably several years. And thus, I'm just making sure I'm like, am I screwing this up? Am I screwing this up? And very often, I might end up actually screwing it up. As you see, I do cause myself some suicides later on. Though some of those are due to a quirky little thing with this game. It looks like it's arranged in tiles, and to an extent it is, but Lolo is actually arranged in half tiles. You can push Emerald Framers exactly half blocks, same with the eggs. And that can get annoying, as you might accidentally block off your path, similarly to a leaper, if you push something 1/2 of a block too far. Like, say, if I just knocked up against the Emerald Frame I'm going up against right now, up 1/2 of a tile, I would have had to redo that entire level. Thankfully, as I mentioned before, redoing the levels in this game isn't too bad, because they're all very short when you get down to it. But still. There's also deaths like that where I'm just being particularly stupid and not thinking ahead of what's above me. This game does have some of those deaths, though at the same time, I'm at least glad that there's at least some thought put into the deaths that can happen as well. Every death in this game, I think, is a learning experience, because you can see where you went wrong and such, especially during the little death animation that Lolo has, which, by the way, my parents and I make fun of that sound effect all the time. Now, one thing I'm going to do right now is, similarly to some other games I've done, I'm actually going to take a look at the manual, see if there's anything special we can find in there really quickly. Let's see, the story. To save the country of Eden from the Great Devil's destruction, the King of Eden has dispatched Princess Lala to seek help. Prince Lolo was requested to accompany Lala back to Eden. On the way back, the Great Devil kidnapped Lala right in front of Lolo. By the way, I should mention every mention of Lolo and Lala is capitalized. To save Eden and rescue Lala, Prince Lolo went to the Devil's haunted castle. Lolo is not blessed with strength or agility, but possesses great courage. So he's Link after Link. High IQ and a lot of patience. Okay, that's kind of funny. Can Lolo save Lala after solving an almost endless series of mazes? I wouldn't call 50 floors almost endless. That quite clearly has a definitive end. Let's see, what do we got special in here? Oh yeah, that's I guess a thing. The heart framers that give you magic shots are technically considered a separate entity, because it's not a certain amount of heart framers that gives you magic shots. It's very specific ones. And it's actually, you need to know which ones are those via trial and error in some cases later on in order to actually solve some of the puzzles. Oh, and here they are just getting Zelda block puzzle on us, because this exact configuration was basically in certain parts of A Link to the Past, albeit in, I think, 2 separate instances. There are times, though, that this game does where there are 2 Gauls that you cannot block on opposite sides of a treasure chest, and in order to beat them, you just need to make a mad gun for the chests, because the fireballs will disappear as soon as you grab the gem anyway. Though, actually, now I think about it, that's one thing I forgot to mention earlier. The grass panels. They protect you from mobile enemies more accurately, like the Almas and Skulls. Medusa, Dom Medusa, and Gulls, their shots can still hit you very much if you're on grass panels, so keep that in mind. I do have to wonder, though, what kind of design document a game like this would have. Because I know some puzzle games like to design their levels from the start back. Or no, from the end of the game backwards, rather. Like, I think Battle Block Theater technically was designed like that. And that's actually a pretty good idea in terms of, like, introducing elements at the right points. However, for a game like this, where it's all very block-based and the puzzle is one set thing with no platforming involved, oh, damn it, me! That happens a lot. You have to wonder what the maps for them looks like. I mean, this is the kind of game you could draw, like, maps for on, like, a napkin, so that'd be interesting to see. Now, something that you saw a couple times at this point that you also should keep in mind is, in cases of levels like these, what order you should actually grab the heart framers in. Like, in this one, you actually want to leave the heart framer that's to the left of the chest alone, as grabbing any other one of the ones in this level last that you could grab last could result in you getting killed by a skull that's roaming around and such. So again, you actually do need to think in this game, unlike some other puzzle games where, like say, I'm thinking of Portal 2's campaign in particular, you just have to look for where the white paint is. Until they introduce the white paint you have to spray on yourself. Also, seeing water again, that reminds me. Say you push a snaky egg into the water, and you stand on it. Eventually, that egg does fall into the water, and you will drown, and that is a death. So you need to make sure, whenever you're on an egg in the water, you need to get off of it as soon as you can. Like so. If I had stayed on that for a second longer, I would have, well, died. And no thanks, I'd rather not. Now, a thing about the bridge items that you have to do in this level, and it's the first time you can theoretically be introduced to it, is that you don't necessarily need to place them between 2 walkable tiles like I had to a moment ago. As long as there is a tile you can walk on, rather, on one side of it, like so, you can walk on it. The one thing I'm not sure if you can do in this game is, say, push a snaky egg into the water, and then place a bridge off of that. Mind you, there's not really much of an opportunity to do that in the game. Though I suppose there theoretically is, because I believe there are some levels in this game that have more than one solution, just the fact that one is clearly the obviously intended one. I'm not entirely sure about that, though. I might also be thinking of some of the sequels. Okay, now you're just loving your arrow platforms, aren't you? Though I love this level in that the only actual threat is that one Medusa that can't even hit you for the most of the stage. Otherwise, it's just you looking at the tiles, trying to figure out which ways you can go, which ways you can't. It's basically a maze, which, mind you, I guess the manual described as, didn't it? Now, something I learned about, actually not too long ago, at least like a year or two at this point, is that despite this being the first Adventures of Lolo, it's not the first game in this series. This started in Japan and in Europe as Eggerland Mystery on the MSX, which then got a sequel, Eggerland 2, on the same system. Though I think that's the first one that got a Famicom port. Then eventually there was, I think, 2 sequels to the game on the Famicom. And then we eventually got Lolo, I think, which is based off of one of the Eggerland games in particular. Though, in terms of some of the stages, I think Eggerland 2 in particular had over 100, which makes it pretty big in comparison to some of the other ones. Floor 6, over halfway there. Speaking of the past of the series, now that I think about it, I want to say it was actually Hal's first game working with Nintendo for anything, at least in the States. Because I know they would later make Kirby, of course, but then I think they made Ghostbusters 2 on the NES. The Stargate game, I want to say, Earthbound, so on and so forth, Kirby's Dream Course and such. The rest is history, because Hal still works with Nintendo to this day, and a lot of the main staff has basically been incepted into Nintendo as the years have gone by. I'm looking at Iwata in particular. May he rest in peace. Though, given some of the staff's involvement in Nintendo, I'm surprised Lolo and Lala haven't showed up as, like, assist trophies in a Smash Brothers game. And given the fact that, at the time of this recording at least, Ultimate was just revealed, like, not even 2 days ago, I guess it's theoretically possible. I mean, if the Frog Prince for Frog the Bell Toll has made it in, I suppose it's not too unlikely he couldn't. But I'm not going to theorize about who could and what couldn't yet, because, well, that's just not really my thing to do. It's always levels like this that make me the most nervous, where I'm surrounded by Medusas, though, just because even though Dawn Medusas are technically more fatal, there are ways around Dawn Medusas a bit more, because they move around and therefore you can have varying amounts of vulnerability. Medusas, they are a constant. They are always staring right into your face, making you feel stressed and just wanting to go home to eat some nice chocolate cake. Wait, was that just me? Okay then. Either way, they always just have made me more nervous in general than the Dawn Medusas, despite being less deadly. Mind you, it helps that I think they're the only enemy that outright shifts their appearance whenever you're near them. Because when they're asleep like that, they're not activated. Kind of creepy, but nothing too much, but God, the face they get when they're activated is bleh. Or at least it was bleh for me, because obviously I'm not the 3 or 4 year old I was when I first played this. Though hearing their sound effects when they actually attack you always has intimidated me. It's kind of like the Greatest Death sound effect for me, actually. It's just one of those sounds that no matter when I hear it, I always just kind of jump a little bit. Because not only has it killed me a lot throughout my lifetime, obviously, but it's very sudden. And this is actually where I think they start to get really interesting with the Leapers in particular. Because past a certain point, the Leapers stop being not just part of the obstacles, but also part of the solution. As we need to bring this Leaper over next to this Medusa here, standing on the grass next to it, and let it walk into us to block off this Medusa from the right, in which case it won't be able to shoot us when we grab that heart framer. I like that. That is smart. This game is actually really intelligent, and I like that. It's a puzzle game made for kids that actually treats them with some amount of brain taxing, and I love that. Not to say that I don't think there's a place for puzzle games that are more on the easy side, especially for earlier kids. Looking at me having issues with some of the putt-putt puzzles in particular. Oh boy. But this game is unexpectedly brutal despite its cutesy art style. Well, not unexpectedly brutal. I guess it's more so it'll actually kind of surprise you with its difficulty at times, as a better way to phrase it. For instance, I actually underthink what I'm supposed to do here. After we grab these 2 heart frames on the left, we have to push that snaky into the water. At which point, I always think I have to get on it immediately, but no, what you actually have to do is go to the bottom right and wait for it to swing around the Medusa's island, and then push the heart frame on top of the Medusa in order to actually make yourself a shortcut. This basically guaranteed my demise. And that happens every time I play this game, I swear to God. There are some levels in this game I just always remember the solution to, but my instincts say to do the other thing, so I do the other thing, and it ends up killing me. I mean, we all have that one thing in games that does that to us, I suppose. Also, I want to say the guy who composed this game's soundtrack, I want to say his name is Kanzashi or something. Hirata Kanzashi? Sounds about right. He only really did these games as well as various other HAL Laboratory games that just weren't as big. In fact, I think he left the company prior to Kirby's release. At least maybe on the NES. He may have been around the time Kirby's Dream Land came out, but not so much this game. So I'm not exactly sure what he's been doing since. In fact, I think it's generally unknown where he's been ever since he left HAL. Shame, too, because even though this song repeats endlessly and will always be stuck in your head, it's a good track. It's like a 30-second loop, which is better than maybe 2/3 of NES games. Also, there's a little quirk. You cannot have 2 eggs in the water at the same time. I don't know why you can't, but you just can't. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we're gonna go finish off the game. See you guys then.